So as we know, making music and playing music, or even listening to music, really does engage the brain. In fact, it engages a lot of components of the brain.
Yes.
And it has been proven to help with development, has been proven to help with mood, help with, a lot of mental health disorder. I can entrain my brain waves to different facial expressions. So in a way, when I smile, obviously it will create a certain brain waves in my brain, and that particular brain sets a pattern. It's going to trigger a specific sound from a computer. Whereas if I don't smile or frown in a neutral position, I've entrained that set of brainwaves to trigger a different sound. We can actually do this again as a neurofeedback. So, we can play in a band, we can play in a group, or we can actually engage that with interactive metronome, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of clapping it. So remember, our brain, it's all about stimulation.
Welcome to another episode of Hopeful Neuron. Today we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Yvonne Chong, who is a neuroscientist, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her research. She's dedicated her career to understanding the complexities of the human brain, and her work has significantly advanced our knowledge in this fascinating field. In this episode, we'll dive into some intriguing topics, including how smiling can engage more facial muscles and reflect broader brain activity, the impact of negative and positive facial expression on brain waves, and the unique challenges and insight related to autism. Hello, Dr. Yvonne.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you for joining us. And can you show us a little bit about your journey and what brought you to this unique field?
Yeah, absolutely. My background is actually chiropractic, and I did extra studies in neuroscience a little bit, more so on applied neuroscience. So I have been a chiropractor since 2012, so it has been a good 12 years, 13 years in practice. And it has been really good. So initially my focus was on high performance sports. So I had the opportunity to work with a lot of high level athletes. I traveled the world with them. It was really, really great fun. And this recent few years, I decided to just change course to focus back on my interest in neuro and and my interest in childhood neurodevelopment. So which led me to doing the Malelo course and getting board certified in childhood neurodevelopment. I think just this recent few years. So that's a bit of my career background, but alongside with that, I've always been interested in sound and music. So I'm a musician and music producer as well. So I've always liked to combine the two worlds of therapy together. Yes. So clearly we know that there are, tons of advances in music therapy out there. But my focus really, it's more so into how specific sound frequency resonates with the brain waves and how it creates certain physiological outcome from there. As we both know, because we both did Malelo, they use a lot of modalities such as lights, photobiomodulation and sound, as one of the medium or tools to stimulate the brain. So that's where my area of focus is, in terms of interest. So when I was working at Brain Hub City, we had a really good facilities over there, and we constantly explore new ideas and new ways to engage kids, to be more interested in therapy. So obviously we deal with the same cohort, which is kids in the spectrum, and also a lot of other challenge kids that were diagnosed with, say, global developmental delay, PANDAS, PANS. So, it's not an easy cohort to work with. I'm sure you have the experience too. So I'm constantly finding new ways to try to engage them, in a way that it's easier for us to deliver therapy, and as well as it's enjoyable for them to engage in therapy too.
Yeah.
Go on. So
In some of the videos, I saw the kids having earphones. So is specifically like right brain music, left brain, or it's different frequencies and so on?
I tend to mix it up. So when I get the chance, and if the kids are compliant enough, I'll usually do an EEG. So an EEG scan will give me an idea as to what specific wavelength they are lack of, or what specific wavelength in which lobe that we're trying to target. And then I would try to find a sound source that would target that. Either that, I'll make my own sound source that target that. So it will be in the form of, say, solfeggio frequency, either that or binaural beat, or certain component of sound that can create certain effects. So there are a few very well researched music, say Mozart and Mozart Sonata in D. So that has been proven they actually have an RCT that was investigating how this piece of music has helped people, has helped people diagnosed with childhood epilepsy to reduce the amount of seizure. So there are quite a good, amount of studies behind that. And sometimes I'll use certain classical music to trigger certain physiological response that I wanted on the brain. Yeah.
And can one download your music?
Absolutely. I've created a couple that I just put it up on YouTube. I encourage people to use it if they see fit. So the experiment and the research that I did about the music was essentially out of fun from work. So I recruited a few people to see if certain frequency has any particular impact on the brain. So as we did Malelo course, we know that the low frequency music, tend to bias and stimulate the right brain a little bit more, whereas the high frequency tend to go to the left. So that was my interest, to investigate a little bit deeper into that. So I took a piece of music, a piece of meditative music, and I modified the frequency to a low frequency music. And from there, I delivered the sound. I did a pre and post QEEG scan, and compare the scanned pre and post to see what the effects has, what the effect the music has on the brain. So surely from there, low frequency music, we see that it targets delta and theta brainwaves a bit more, which is the brainwaves that are rather slow, and those are the brainwaves that helps with sleep, helps with regulating our nervous system and parasympathetic system, things like that, amongst many other things. So yeah, that was quite a fascinating findings. I'm in the process of writing a paper about this. But yeah, so generally that was the nutshell as to how I want to create my music. And yeah, that music's up on YouTube. If you guys want to use it, go ahead. Yeah.
And with the music that targets the delta wave, would you say it's also applicable for all the population, like dementia and stuff like that?
I mean, the study in itself, it's not a very high hierarchy study in a way. I would say it's an experimental study. So the subjects, there are eight people, and the age group ranges between 18 to 51. So they were all healthy subjects.
Yeah.
So in terms of whether it's applicable to people with Alzheimer's or dementia, I would say it's worth trying, but based on the research and the study group, I can't really just
Yeah.
link that. But from a clinical standpoint, you can, I don't see any harm trying that in some
Yeah.
ways. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Interesting. And now about smiling.
That's yeah, that's a fun thing that I've been trying to work on. That's my other project that I've been trying
Yes.
to work on. So as we know that there's some limitation as to how, people can make music. People in the disabled group can make music. So if you're born with no hands, it's hard to play guitar. So my project aims to find different ways, different more modern ways to get kids in the disabled group to engage in making music. So as we know, making music and playing music, or even listening to music, really does engage the brain. In fact, it engages a lot of components of the brain.
Yes.
And it has been proven to help with development, has been proven to help with mood, help with, a lot of mental health disorder. A lot of research out there actually start to investigate and looked into it from a neuroscience standpoint, which is good. And that gave me some like foundational information to work with as well and built upon that. So I was quite happy that, there are such information out there. So, so I bought a little EEG device just to muck around fun. So this is more like a personal EEG device. So the idea was to be able to convert brain waves into sound waves. Initially, the idea was to convert that and perform live. That was my initial idea. So then throughout the research and throughout the trial and error by learning brain and computer interface, so I discovered that you can actually use that for therapy, just as almost as a sensory neurofeedback tool. So when we do neurofeedback modality, we have vision. Is that right? We have vision, and the kids will be entrained to certain vision, and the brainwaves would change, and whatever subsequent visual stimulus that is appearing, it's gonna be targeted towards normalizing the brainwaves. That's neurofeedback, from my understanding. So I created this little project to also, apart from doing it for art purpose, I want to do it as a feedback device for therapy as well. So it's in the progress. So far, I can entrain my brainwaves to different facial expression. So in a way, when I smile, obviously it will create a certain brainwaves in my brain, and that particular brain sets a pattern. It's going to trigger a specific sound from the computer. Whereas if I don't smile or frown in a neutral position, I've entrained that set of brainwaves to trigger a different sound. So what is that significance? So in a way, if we talk about the therapy world, so we can actually do this again as a neurofeedback. So we can play in a band, we can play in a group, or we can actually engage that with interactive metronome, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of clapping it, so remember, our brain, it's all about stimulation. So when it comes to a stage where our brain does certain exercise, it plateaus out. The neuron, the temporal summation actually plateaus out. So we need novelty, and especially the brain part that really thrives on that is cerebellum. So, and cerebellum has a blueprint of the whole brain, really. So a good way to target cerebellum is novelty. You just keep changing exercises. So
Yes.
I think this is a good way to actually, spice up the whole therapy in some ways. So I haven't yet to try it on any patient yet, but it's in progress. So yeah, I think that's fun.
Uh-huh. And can you explain again how negative facial expressions are reflected more in the right hemisphere?
So emotion essentially, from our work or study from childhood neurodevelopment program. So essentially emotion, it's negative emotion, it's more biased towards the right brain, right? Obvious, but there are nuances to that, right? We know that right brain is the big picture brain, and the small, like the left brain is more the detail orientated brain. But essentially, emotion, even since when we're born as a child, right, before we learn any semantics of words and stuff like that, our survival mechanism actually, it's based on our interaction, our emotional response with the parent, right? So, for example, how do baby tell the mom that we want to eat, right? We're hungry. So it's based on a feed forward feedback mechanism that the mom and the child has. So when they're hungry, say for example, when they're hungry, the baby's going to cry, and then the mom is going to come running with a bottle of milk, right? And then that's the way the baby associated with crying, just like I cry, okay, and then this woman come and feed me. So next time when I'm hungry, I'm going to cry again, and then this woman is going to come feed me again. So that's how the baby learned about emotion in a nutshell as well. So so right brain generally develops first when we are, in our toddler years and things like that, and that sets a big blueprint of, an emotional blueprint in our brain. So from a neurobiology standpoint, I think that's why it sits on the right brain. But obviously there are nuances. So say the semantics of emotion, like, labeling the emotion, that's going to involve the left as well. But from the EEG experiment that I did, it really engages a lot of the dorsal attention network, apart from a lot of limbic network when we smile. So another thing with smiling and frowning as well. So smiling engages more facial muscle, and we know that when more muscles engage, our motor cortex also engage a bit more. When frowning or not neutral expression, our motor cortex also doesn't engage that much. That's another nuances about, which one it's, and also depending on symmetry as well. So if you happen to have a more right brain bias asymmetry, then of course when you smile, you're going to have an asymmetry in facial activation that could activate that as well. So it's not just from I won't say everyone is exactly the same, but from a top trial in like using my brain, that seems to be the case.
And your daily work with children on the autistic spectrum. So what do you do in therapy to encourage them to smile, for example?
I haven't actually used that in therapy. So, in terms of work, I've been using more the traditional Modelo method, as well as other form of modalities like audiovisual, photobiomodulation, balance vestibular training, exactly like similar to what you've been doing. So, in terms of say when we engage kids in music and things like that. So I tend to, when it comes to especially stimulating the cerebellum, I'll try to be as creative as possible, because the cerebellum really thrives on novelty first. And second, if the kids are a little bit more enjoyable in their therapy, they actually engage more on neuron network. So I always try to prioritize that two things. Fun and also novelty. So in terms of, say, for example, things that I'll use in clinic when I try to engage cerebellum, I'll do an interactive metronome, and I'll get them to walk backwards. And the coming thing I would like to do is I'll do the same. I'll stack it with the brainwave device, and I'll get them to smile in every 2 beats to trigger sound. right? That could be one thing. Or I can put them in a group situation if they're mature enough and can engage in such activity. A group situation where there are a couple of musicians, one with the ukulele, or one with a guitar, one with a drum. So they can do rhythmic entrainment therapy, just like interactive metronome. Instead of using a hand, you can use a facial muscle to to produce the sound, but also align with the beat of the group. So I think that's quite a fun way to, to get rhythm in your system and engage your cerebellum.
It is. It's very interesting. And like in a short way, could you just explain which part of the brain is associated with our emotions?
Which part of the brain is associated with emotion, right? So from my understanding, it's such a complex thing to answer as well. It really depends on your personal experience to that particular stimulus that trigger your emotion. It could be negative, it could be positive,
Yeah.
right? But generally, that's going to engage limbic. So if I said, if I'm going to talk about in the context of how music invoke emotion, say how music invoke positive emotion, so that's going to trigger certain areas such as definitely the amygdala a little bit, and also the bigger part that's going to be engaged is the temporal lobe, especially any structure along the Herschel gyrus. So those are where our sound template is stored. So a little fun fact about music, right? How music invokes certain emotion is that a certain sound outside, how we process it is that we try to match the sound source to the template that we already have stored. And if it's close to matching it or slightly deviate from it, that creates a little neuronal circuit that induce the dopamine release by triggering this part called the nucleus accumbens. So yeah, so that's how positive emotion comes into play when we listen to a certain very touching piece of music per se.
Yes.
Yeah, so same goes to negative emotion. So if you listen to a piece of sound or music and you heard, and it triggers certain experience in you that maybe bring back trauma and things like that, the amygdala is going to come into play again, obviously the limbic area, and a certain area that's going to be associated to emotion, usually the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. But that's more the positive. That's what I find. But yeah, negative emotion usually you see an amplified of a limbic area without too much activation from the frontal to dampen it. That's what I find so far.
Wow. I guess that all of the kids just love coming to your sessions.
I haven't actually like implemented too much, but that's in my future plan. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And do you find it difficult to do the QEG with young children?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The EEG that you see on my page is the one that I'll be using for therapy, but EEG that I use for just general outcome measure for brain scan are the 24 channel with
Yeah.
the cap and stuff. Yes, especially kids, obviously kids in the spectrum with a lot of fear-based response, same very heightened moral reflex or fear paralysis reflex. You see them really fearful of anything new, anything close to touching their head, they'll freak out. Yes, and a little nuances on that too. So sometimes we'll go ahead and do the EEG as well, but we have to consider the environment, the situation is in. So you see a very heightened, beta wave because obviously they are in fight or flight mode. So obviously the result is not truly reflective of their actual state. So yeah, sometimes we have to consider that, or sometimes we don't do it at all because it wouldn't provide us with any valid results if you keep screening. So all we
Of course.
can see is just artifacts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. And how can parents contact you?
They can reach me through Facebook or Instagram. I think that would be the best. Most people reach out to me from Instagram.
So your Instagram is?
My Instagram is at Neuroactive Hub. So Neuro, Neuro, active,
Yes.
ACTIVE, and Hub, HUB.
Yes. We'll add the link at the end of the podcast.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. It's been a true pleasure talking to
Pleasure's
you,
mine.
learning from you so much. Thank
Pleasure's
you
all
very much.
mine.